Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of The Dave Neal Show. NBC has been caught red-handed omitting a couple words that Amber said in her interview with Savannah Guthrie Friday night on Dateline. That was a big slip-up for Amber. So the question becomes, did Amber's camp, her PR, have this line scrubbed, or did NBC, or is it all, due to timing? I have to say, if you've watched the episode last night, we essentially had clips Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday released on the Today Show and Peacock, and that's essentially all we got Friday night. Friday night was just a more beefed up production timeline version of a interview that was edited. The interview was, and this is why podcasting is so popular, because you get just free-form conversation and you get to read people's body language. But this interview I'm about to share with you guys was edited. There was a lot of sighs and dramatic pauses and things like that taken out. And you could say it's because they wanted to squeeze it into a special, but it's like, we live in 2022. There's unlimited bandwidth. Air the full interview. Now, it's important after I set this up that you stick around for the final 3 minutes here. I go into my editing software, Premiere Pro, and I layer the audios on top of each other, and it shows you exactly where NBC extracted the slip up from Amber. So stick around for the end, and we're going to show that part. It's going to blow your mind. Just air the full interview and let people watch. I don't care if she sneezes or if an ambulance drives by and ruins the audio. Give everybody, this is exactly why people wanted the trial aired, because they don't trust media to edit things in and out and change the script. Just share the human dynamic, the full emotions, and all that jazz. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. I'm on Patreon for private membership-only content, patreon.com/Dave Neal. Let's watch the clip that includes the ending, the slip-up, and then I'm going to share with you the live version that was aired Friday night on Dateline that omitted this final line. Have a watch.
But I am looking at a transcript that says, he says, you start physical fights, and you say, I did start a physical fight. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. I mean, this is in black and white. I understand context. But you're testifying and you're just telling me today, I never started a physical fight, and here you are on tape saying you did.
As I testified on the stand about this, is that when your life is at risk, not only will you take the blame for things that you shouldn't take the blame for, but when you're in an abusive dynamic, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, you don't have the resources that, say, you or I do, with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but.
So she says, you don't have the resources that you or I do. We're going to watch the behavioral arts YouTube channel to see what they have to say about her framing of this statement, and then we're going to watch the version on Dateline that omits the last few seconds here. So this kind of made the rounds on Reddit. Is Amber silencing Dateline? I made a post previously, and again, it shows out the discrepancies from the clips that were shared initially, how those were scrubbed off the internet, and how now they've kind of cleaned it up. And the other thought being is that they aired these clips initially for a pro-Johnny fan base to encourage them to watch the full interview. And then on the full interview, we're more sympathetic to Amber. That's a thought. My personal review of Savannah Guthrie's work here is that she did a phenomenal job in being compassionate and empathetic, but also asking very tough questions. Let's watch what the behavioral arts body language guy has to say about this.
But all of it pales in comparison to what she says at the end, which to me is one of her biggest slip-ups, whether it was on the stand or in this interview. To me, this is huge. She's talking about people who have been in abusive relationships, emotionally, physically, psychologically, and she creates this group of people who have suffered through abuse. Then at the end, she says, if you're one of those people who has lived through abuse, you don't have the resources that you and I do.
All right, so here it is.
Don't have the resources that, say, you or I do.
She excludes herself from the group of people who have been abused and ties herself to Savannah Guthrie.
Now, if you want to be rational here, you could say, well, what she means is Savannah and Amber are celebrities, so they have resources that others don't. That would be, if you wanted to be rational. But the fact that that slip-up is now clipped out of the final version makes you wonder if it was her team saying, all right, get that out, clean it up.
You and I, who are not part of that group, that is really not how we speak if we feel like we're part of that demographic that we just created. Let me give you an example to demonstrate how off that sounded to me using a demographic that I'm part of. So let's say mentalists, that's a good example. Let's say you come to my house and you see my library and there's all these books on behavioral psychology and body language and people reading, and then a whole other section of like the techniques of mentalism, like the actual trickery behind it. And you ask me like, who would read all these books? Why do you have all these books? Now imagine my answer to that is, when it's your job to get on stage and read people and connect with their thoughts and amaze people into thinking that you can really read their thoughts, you read a lot more books about psychology and mentalism and magic than you and I would.
All right, so that's one way to look at it. You and I is a way of saying like we're separate. Like you and I, hey, like the crazy stuff they would do, you know, you and I, we wouldn't do that. All right, it's a little bit of a stretch. But now let's watch last Friday night's Dateline episode where this part was omitted. I'm going to watch the live stream that Popcorn Planet, Andy Signore, was running because they have the full in the moment live that Dateline had where they omitted this clip.
Which you acknowledge hitting.
We've seen this portion.
Clips are not evidence of what was happening. It was evidence of a negotiation of how to talk about that.
So what she's saying right now is the clips of her admitting to starting fights. She's saying, look, just because I said I admitted starting fights doesn't mean that that actually happened. That was just me negotiating with him. And they knew they were in audio, so you would think that you wouldn't lie on audio if you knew you were being recorded.
With
Your negotiation.
But I am looking at a transcript that says, he says, you start physical fights, and you say, I did start a physical fight.
I did start a physical fight.
You did. But you're just telling me today, I never started a physical fight, and here you are on tape saying you did.
As I testified on the stand about this,
No.
is that when your life is...
You know you're in hot water when Savannah's got all her notes up. She's like, but I got receipts. And you're like, oh boy, you brought receipts? Oh geez, I didn't. Guys, you didn't tell me Savannah was going to bring receipts? Oh boy, let's double down.
At risk. Not only will you take the blame for things that you shouldn't take the blame for, but when you're in an abusive dynamic, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, you don't have the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but.
All right, I never do this, but I'm going to show you the screen share of my editing software just to show you exactly what they took out. Because it's kind of, they did a good job. They did a good job of removing this. This is why they shoot 4 camera angles behind the head. They can shoot it so that you don't get to see the lips right away. And they call it Frankenbiting, right? When it's Frankenbiting, the way to edit a monster out of initial content. So first, watch the main screen right here as I play the version that was the initial promo and listen to the slip up. And then I'm going to play the version that is what was aired on Dateline. And you're going to hear exactly what they left out.
Have the resources that, say, you or I do with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're living in it.
Cut.
But then there are other times.
All right. You got that? She said, you don't have the resources that say you or I do with the luxury of saying this is black and white. Now watch, I'm going to mute the original version, the big screen, and I'm going to play the audio from the picture-in-picture, and now watch the difference.
Emotionally, and physically, you don't have the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white.
You don't have the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, versus you don't have the luxury, you don't have the resources that say you or I do with that luxury of saying that this is black and white. Do you see how that was just completely taken out?
Have the resources that, say, you or I do with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're...
Now, let's play them both together. This isn't going to make sense until she says, but they're synced up on certain words.
Have the resources that, say, you or I do with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but.
Do you see how it synced up there? Again, not to beat a dead horse. I'm going to play this clip for you on top of each other. The first 3 or 4 seconds, it's going to sound like gibberish, and then it's going to sync up perfectly. Let's expand this audio right here, just so you see what I'm talking about here. 1 second. Let me just expand this. So you're going to see the audio right here syncs up perfectly. Have a listen.
Have the resources that, say, you or I do with the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're living in it.
All right, folks. So that's it. They edited it, whether it was NBC's doing or they just wanted to slice out. I mean, look, let's go back to the full screen here. How much was that? Was that even like, it was one, just basically, 2 seconds were clipped out? 2.5 seconds? So clearly they didn't do this to save time. They did it because they wanted to remove this slip up. This is it, folks. This is why people wanted to watch the court hearing in its entirety. Because you just can't trust other people to deliver information, can you? All right, let me know what you guys think. And let me go back here and get my outro music. And we are going to have more content coming your way. Leave a comment below. Wild times. Bye, guys.